Caught Stealing was way better than expected, and Wednesday Season 2 is giving us plenty to unpack. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Josh and welcome to an episode of Wednesday Watchlist, the video series in which I go over recent movies and shows that I have watched. In this week's episode, I'm going to be giving my short review of the movie Caught Stealing, and then we are going to discuss the entire second season of the Netflix show Wednesday. That pretty much sums up this week's episode, so without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right on into my review of the movie Caught Stealing. Now, one last caveat before I dive in, and that is going to be a spoiler warning. If you have not seen the movie Caught Stealing or you have not finished the second season of Wednesday, this is your spoiler warning because I'm going to be going over spoilers all throughout this video. Alright, now that that's over with, let's go ahead and talk about Caught Stealing. This movie is about a guy who just so happens to get involved with the wrong crowd at the wrong time, and it ends up nearly costing him everything. And now, moving on to the cast of this movie. The cast for this movie is pretty stacked. First up, we've got Austin Butler as Hank Thompson, Zoe Kravitz as Yvonne, Regina King as Detective Roman, Bad Bunny as Colorado, Matt Smith as Russ, and I apologize if I mispronounce his name, but Liev Schreiber as Lipa, Vincent D'Onofrio as Shmuley, Nikita Kukushki as Pavel, Yuri Kolokolnikov as Alexei, and Carol Bane as Bube. So, like I said at the beginning of this video, this movie was way better than I expected, and I feel like this is solely because of the trailer slash the marketing for this movie. I feel like the trailer and the marketing did not really do a good job here really conveying what this movie was exactly about and like what direction it was going to go in. And I just feel like the trailer and previews for this movie really did not do it justice because it actually is quite a good movie. Now, starting off with what I liked about this movie, first up is going to be the acting. I feel like everyone in this movie does a really good job here, and I especially like the chemistry between Austin Butler's character and Zoe Kravitz's character. And although Zoe Kravitz does not make it to the end of this movie, I do really like the chemistry we see between, again, her character and Austin Butler's character. And I also really like the dynamic between this pair in the movie, where Zoe's character is more of the caring one and more of the cautious one, where Austin Butler's character is more of the I'm gonna do what I want character, so to speak. I really like how that dynamic played off in this movie and affected their relationship. The next thing that I liked about this movie is the twist, and that twist being the fact that we find out that Detective Roman is actually working with the bad guys in this movie. I did not see this coming at all. The only time I suspected it was right before it got revealed, where they were both in the diner. Detective Roman says, "Now we wait for backup," and they're just kind of chilling, like the vibe. I don't know if it was the music or just, I don't know what it was specifically, but something immediately shifted in the movie where I was like, wait a minute, something seems off about this whole thing. I honestly just did not see this twist coming, and so that is one of the other things that I liked about this movie. Speaking of Detective Roman as well, a little side note here, but I also really liked the fact that Regina King was in this movie. I did not know she was in this. I don't know if she was featured in the trailer or not, but I was genuinely surprised, but pleasantly surprised that she was in this movie, and I feel like she did a really good job in this movie, and I liked her character and her acting in this movie as well. And then the last thing that I liked about this movie is the action sequences. I feel like they look good, I feel like they were filmed good, and I just really overall liked the action sequences in this movie, and I felt like they were done very well. And I also feel like the fights were pretty cool too. And then moving on to what I did not like about this movie, the main and only thing for me, and this again ties into what I said at the beginning of this review, is that the trailer did not do this movie justice. I feel like that is my main gripe with this movie. From what I remember, a lot of the stuff that's in this movie just wasn't in the trailer. And I feel like that's really like what is harming this movie, is the fact that the trailer like just did not do this movie justice, and that is my main gripe with this movie. But other than that, I feel like this movie is a good movie. Again, I feel like it's way better than the trailer led it on to be, and I feel like it's way better than I expected at least. I honestly did not think I was going to be interested in this movie at all, but I went into it blind and I was like, I'm gonna just give it a fair shot. Austin Butler's in it, Zoe Kravitz is in it, why not just try it out? And I ended up really liking this movie. And so with that being said, my rating for this movie is going to be an A. I feel like this is a good movie overall. I feel like a lot of people are probably gonna wait till this is on a streaming site to check it out, but I feel like once it hits streaming, a lot more people are going to watch this movie and check it out. My main gripe with this movie is the fact that I just don't feel like the trailer did it justice. But other than that, again, I feel like it's a good movie and a pretty good watch. All right, now moving on to my review / my thoughts of the second season of Wednesday. So I'm gonna give a quick summary, and then I want to go over the cast, and then go over my overall thoughts for the season, go over some highlights, and then talk about things that I liked this season, some things that I didn't like, and then at the very end, I will give this season a rating. But moving on to a quick summary of season 2 of Wednesday. In season 2 of Wednesday, Wednesday faces new and old enemies in season 2 as she returns to Nevermore, only to discover things have changed in more ways than expected. Now, let's go over the cast. The cast for this is pretty stacked. Like, there are so many characters, especially in this second season. But starting off with Jenna Ortega as Wednesday, we then have Lady Gaga, who is making a cameo in this season as Rosalind Rotwood. We get Hunter Duhan returning as Tyler, Emma Myers as Enid Sinclair, Joy Sunday as Bianca Barclay, Georgie Farmer as Ajax, Musa Mustafa as Eugene Ottinger, and then I apologize if I mispronounce anybody's name, but Luyanda Unati Lewis Nyawo as Sheriff Richie, Gwendolyn Christie as Principal Weems, Jasmine McShane as Sheriff Galpin, Isaac Ordonez as Pugsley Adams, Luis Guzman as Gomez Adams, Catherine Zeta-Jones as Morticia Adams, Joanna Lumley as Grandma Hester Frump, Christina Ricci as Marilyn Thornhill, Billy Piper as Isadora, Evie Templeton as Agnes, Steve Buscemi as Principal Dort, Owen Painter as Slurp / Isaac Knight, Frances O'Connor as Francoise Galpin, Gracie Goldman as Gabrielle Barclay, Thandwi Newton as Dr. Fairburn, and Christopher Lloyd as Professor Orloff. Now, I do apologize if I missed any characters or any actors or actresses there. There were just a lot of characters, and I tried to get essentially every character that played a role in this second season. But now, let's go over my brief thoughts, and then we'll dive into the highlights of this second season. So firstly, to me, this season is better than the first season in my opinion, and I feel like this season, because it is so full, it covers a lot of content, and I particularly like that in a show, but I just feel like overall this season is way better than the first one. And I also really like how each episode kind of feels like its own movie, with just how many things happen and how much stuff is packed into each episode. But moving on to the highlights of this second season. Firstly, again, a lot does happen in this season. We got a lot going on. There's essentially 3 storylines going on in each episode. It is just jam-packed full of stuff. I feel like part 1 was kind of dull in its storylines a little bit. I feel like we really didn't get much in part 1, but then in part 2, I feel like things escalated a lot quicker, and we got, again, just really full episodes. But the first highlight of this season is the fact that Wednesday loses her psychic abilities, and this season essentially shows her trying to reactivate her psychic abilities and trying to figure out how to do that. She spends a lot of time this season trying to read and understand and decipher Aunt Ophelia's journal, if I'm not mistaken, and Wednesday's mom, of course, ends up taking away this journal, and then by the end of the season she does end up getting it back. But the main reason why Wednesday's mom took it away from her is because she was worried that what happened to her sister, Aunt Ophelia, was going to happen to her daughter Wednesday, which is understandable. I also like how Wednesday in this season learns to value her family and her friends more. In this season, we do see Wednesday and her mom spend the first half of the season butting heads, again, because Wednesday's mom is trying to protect Wednesday from ending up like her sister Ophelia. And so again, she does take away Ophelia's book from Wednesday. And so we see them butting heads over this. And we just see them butting heads all throughout the season. But by the end of the season, I feel like they have essentially put their differences aside and just realized that, family is what's most important here. And then when it comes to Wednesday's friends, I feel like we see Wednesday realize that she really can't go at everything alone. She really does need her friends beside her, especially Enid. I feel like the first half of this season, we see Wednesday try to protect Enid because she has that premonition that Enid is going to die and that Wednesday is responsible for it. And so after she has this premonition, we see Wednesday essentially try to stop this from happening, but she doesn't tell Enid that she's had this premonition. And in doing so, she kind of pushes Enid off and just sort of does it in a way where she's trying to protect her, but it kind of just comes off as rude and mean. And so I feel like this season we really see Wednesday find out that, you can't really do everything by yourself. You do need, your family and friends there to support you, and it's important to really value those people in your life. Another highlight this season is the fact that Wednesday's parents are a lot more involved here than they were in season 1. They are in almost every episode this season, if I'm not mistaken, and I personally feel like it fits with the overall story and plot of this whole season, especially with the whole Isaac Knight and Francois situation, because Wednesday and Gomez both went to school with Francois and Isaac, and I believe they were friends, if I'm not mistaken, during their times in school. And so I feel like it was fitting to have them in this season a lot more than they were in season 1, again, simply because a lot of the plot lines and storylines were directly connected to Morticia and Gomez. Another highlight this season was the fact that we found out that the Crow murder / killer / controller was Judy, and we found out that the reason why she was doing this is because her and her father were running this secret project called Project Lois, if I'm not mistaken, and this was essentially the super secret project to harness outcasts' abilities and figure out a way to give them to normies. And we also find out that that is how Judy got her powers, is because her father experimented on her, and we find out that that is how she got the ability to control crows. Another highlight this season is we find out that Agnes is Wednesday's stalker. This is more so having to do with the first part of this second season, because in the second part this is really just irrelevant. But in the first part, I believe it's the first episode, we find out Wednesday has a stalker and she's trying to figure out like who this stalker is, and it turns out to be Agnes, the girl who can turn invisible. And of course by the end of the season it's discovered how Agnes is doing this simply because she wants to fit in and be seen, and more specifically she wants to be seen by Wednesday. And another highlight was Wednesday and Agnes switching bodies. I feel like they did such a good job. Like the actresses Jenna Ortega and Evie Templeton did such a fantastic job portraying Wednesday and Agnes switching bodies, like from things like how the characters walk to how the characters talk to how the characters like literally position their head and their eyes. Like they just did such a phenomenal job playing each other after they switch bodies. Like it is so believable, and they just do such a fantastic job here. And so I felt like that was a really cool element this season. Another big reveal this season was the fact that Principal Dort is a like pyro outcast, like he can control fire, but we end up finding this out, I believe like midway through season 2, because he ends up setting his like business partner on fire in order to get like all the money from Grandmama Frump. And so that was one of the big reveals this season, was the fact that he was this like pyro outcast and that he could control fire. And then we also got the fact that Capri apparently has this like pack of hides that she is working with / protecting, I guess, because her father was a Hyde. Capri comes up to Tyler and she tells him that she's got like this little pack of hides going on, and that none of them need a master because they're like each other's master in a way, where they work as a pack, and so that eliminates the need for any of them to have a true master as a Hyde. And so I feel like that's going to play a really big role in season 3, is seeing like who exactly is in this like Hyde pack and like what new characters we're going to be introduced to. But I thought that that was a really interesting element, especially because Capri is a werewolf. So I'm kind of curious as to like how this is all going to play out in season 3. And then lastly, 2 huge reveals this season. Number 1, the fact that Pugsley's like pet zombie Slurp turned out to be Isaac Knight, and then he ended up being where Thing came from. Like Thing is just a hand, and the hand belonged to Isaac Knight. Like Thing is Isaac Knight's hand. Like again, huge reveals through this season, and I didn't see any of that coming. I had a feeling the like Boy with the Clockwork Heart was going to tie into the rest of the season somehow, but I had no idea that that is where Thing came from. I had no idea about like that huge fight and the fact that Morticia is the one who cut off Isaac's hand, and because his experiment went wrong, that's what created Thing. I did not see that coming. And then lastly, what I think is the biggest reveal of the entire season and the most shocking is the fact that Aunt Ophelia is in fact not dead, but she is instead locked up in Grandmama's Frump's basement. And then when we see her, she's writing out like Wednesday must die, and this is after Wednesday has a like premonition or psychic vision that Aunt Ophelia is alive. I just thought that that was absolutely insane, because we go throughout this whole season with Morticia saying, you know, before she went crazy, throughout this whole season, Grandmama Frump has been supportive of Wednesday, you know, reading Aunt Ophelia's journal and all that. And I wonder if that's because she wants Wednesday to fully unlock the mysteries behind the journal, maybe so she can like heal or help Aunt Ophelia. But at least that's what I gathered from this reveal and how she has been so supportive of Wednesday tapping into this occult stuff all throughout the second season. But the whole like Wednesday must die thing I think is absolutely wild, because I'm like, these two characters I've never met. Like obviously there's something going on here that we don't know and don't understand just yet, but I just think that that's an absolutely crazy thing to like show at the end of the season. Like holy cow. And then that's pretty much all the highlights that I picked up on during this season, and there could very well be some stuff that I missed. If I did miss anything, feel free to let me know in the comments and I'll just type my thoughts out on it down there. But those were pretty much all the big like highlights and reveals for this season. And now moving on to what I liked and did not like about this season, starting off with the things that I liked. So firstly, as I said at the beginning of this review, I like the fact that there is a lot more going on this season. I like that it's way more action-packed, way more story and lore-packed this season than it was, I feel like, in the first season, and I really like that element of this second season. And then the second thing that I liked is, again, the Wednesday and Agnes like switching bodies. I just feel like these actresses did such a phenomenal job portraying each other in each other's bodies. Like again, the whole, like the way they walk through the hallways, the way their whole mannerisms, like I just feel like they just did such a perfect job here. And so that for me was the other thing that I really liked this season. And then lastly, I also like the fact that Wednesday has grown and changed a little bit this season. Again, at the beginning, she was more, I would say, a lot more self-centered and a lot more like focused on what she wanted versus, again, appreciating her friends and family and people that are helping her along the way. And I feel like by the end of the season, she has really learned to value her friends and her family. And she has realized that, you know, you don't have to go through everything alone and that you can't really go through everything alone. Like you do need a support system or a support group. And then moving on to what I did not like. The first one, this is going to be a bit nitpicky, but I just did not like the way the hides look. I feel like they just look so goofy. And I feel like this is something that's unchanged from season 1. And I fully don't expect them to change it for season 3. But I just feel like the hides just look so goofy, from the way they stand to like the way their eyes get all big when they change. Like I just feel like it's so goofy and silly, but that's just me being nitpicky. And then the second thing I did not like this season, and this is one of the reasons why I did not talk about it in the highlights, is Bianca's storyline this season. I'm kind of over Bianca, especially throughout this whole second season. Bianca just essentially is used as a pawn in other people's games. Like this whole season, Principal Dort is essentially just using her to get Morticia's mom, Hester Frump, to make a big donation to Nevermore so that he can essentially like rid her of her fortune and essentially like run off with a large amount of cash. Like I did not like the fact that throughout this whole season, she's essentially just used as a pawn. And then I feel like the whole storyline with her trying to protect her mother from being found out by this cult that she left, where she was like recruiting people, I feel like that was a good element, but I feel like it didn't really add much to the story. Like we just see her essentially like moving her mom from this like home place thing to like living in the old burned down part of the school to then being found out. I didn't really like her storyline this season, and I felt like it was unnecessary, and I would just like her to get her own story finally. Like I was so bored of it this season. I was like, oh my god, okay, cool. She's gonna have to use her siren powers on somebody else now. Like, I just felt like it got really redundant and really old, and I just didn't like it. And then lastly, although I personally liked how full this season was, I understand that this might be a bit too much for some people, more specifically like the general audience, especially because they split this season into 2 parts. I feel like it was a lot. Like the first part I feel like was a little bit dull, and then with the second part, like the last 4 episodes of this season, I feel like were just jam-packed. Like it was like 5, 6, 7, 8, and it was just like packed with like reveal here, twist there. Like it was just jam-packed full of stuff. And although me personally, I like that because I just binged the whole thing in a day, you know, not everyone can do that. And especially again, because they split it into 2 parts, I feel like people who might have tuned in for part 1 and they're now tuning in for part 2, like you might have to rewatch the whole thing. in order to like remember what happened in part 1, or even you might have to like rewatch season 1 to fully like understand what has all happened in the show, because I do feel like this season was just jam-packed full of stuff. And so that is just something that I wouldn't say that I didn't necessarily like that about this season. I just feel like it might be a little too stuffed for some people, and I feel like it just might be a lot to digest, especially if you're not watching it all in one go, like if you're taking breaks in between episodes. And so that's just one aspect, again, that I wouldn't say that I necessarily didn't like, but I think might be just a little downside to the second season, if you will. And then that essentially covers this entire second season, the highlights that I picked out, and then just my overall thoughts, what I liked, what I didn't like. And now moving on to my rating for this second season, I'm gonna give season 2 of Wednesday a B rating. I feel like part 1 was not as good. I feel like part 2 was way better than part 1. Again, it was jam-packed full of stuff, and I feel like more things happened in the second half versus the first half. But I do overall feel like this entire season was better than the first season, in my opinion. And I like how many twists and reveals there were this season, and I also liked how there was a lot more background story and a lot more like world building and lore in this second season, at least to me, compared to the first. And then overall, I am really looking forward to season 3, because I feel like that is going to be another full-ish season. Maybe it depends on how things play out, but I feel like there's a lot of things that are going to happen in season 3 given just how season 2 ends. But again, I really did enjoy season 2 of Wednesday. Now, as always, feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Did you like season 2 of Wednesday? Do you like it more than season 1? Or do you like season 1 more? And did you watch it broken up like I did? Did you watch part 1 first and then tune back in for part 2? Or are you just gonna watch the whole thing in one go? And do you feel like this season was too full, or do you feel like it had just enough content? But that is pretty much going to do it for this week's episode of Wednesday Watch List. Again, as always, feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. But that is going to conclude this week's episode of Wednesday Watch List. As always, please don't forget to leave a thumbs up, leave a comment in the comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification to get notified when I upload more videos. But that is going to be it for this week's episode of Wednesday Watch List. If you've made it to the end of this video, thank you so much, and I will see you guys all in the next video.